Hello, Facebook fam. It's Vanessa Petronelli here for your fourth episode of Elite Women Live. And today I'm super excited, super stoked to bring a very special guest. I think a lot of you are going to love this conversation. In fact, I know a lot of you will love this conversation because it's something that no matter, where you are and what part of your life, you're constantly relating. And I wanted to bring on an expert in this field, somebody who I have closely connected with. She's a powerhouse. She's a wonderful conscious leader in the relationship sphere and spectrum, and she helps women find the right man. So without further ado, we're going to jump right in. I would love to welcome my wonderful guest, Antia Boyd. Welcome, Antia. Hey.
Hey, thank you for having me, Vanessa.
Of course. It's awesome to have you here. I mean, I've so enjoyed our relating, and I knew the first time that we dropped in, which was probably about a month or two ago, I was like, oh my gosh, I got to have Antia on this program, on this series, because you're just so, what I love about you is you're just so straight to the point. There's no bullshit.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of love, and I just feel you're so committed to love and to helping other people to bring more love into their lives, specifically through relationships and for women finding their right partner. So, thanks for taking the time to be here and to join our tribes, the merging of our tribes today. I love it.
Yeah, totally. And it's so mutual, Vanessa. Like when I met you, it's like, and that's what I always tell my women you just feel like you have this gut instinct about people where you just like your essences just align, right? And that's what I really felt when I met you.
Yeah, I feel it. And I love that. Actually, what you just said, something in your gut just knows, oh, there's something about this person. I actually feel like that might be something fun to jam on a little bit, yeah. to kind of dive in. So like, I'm curious to know for you, what do you notice happening, in your body, in your mind, in your heart when you meet, somebody in your life? So, I mean, I know you're married, yeah, and you can refer to your wonderful hubby. Yeah. But just like, even with us, like, how did you know, like, what was it in your gut that knew like this was somebody that you could connect with? Because I think that this is something that a lot of people tend to have some problems with. Like, they're not sure what is bringing a connection together, and when it's like the most aligned, heart-centered connection, and when it's maybe more of those, harsher, more challenging, kindred like connections that maybe ending up a little bit more toxic. So if you could speak a little bit about that, that would be awesome, because I'm curious to hear for you what comes up.
Totally. Yeah, it's really interesting, and I have heard that question before. I feel the biggest piece for me is like when I met you, like I felt really strengthened. There was like as if I'm like double the power that I have inside of me, right? And then the other piece is we were really bouncing off each other. There was not a dull moment, right? And the more we were talking, the more I got energized, and the more I got excited, and the more ideas I had and inspirations I had. And I just really felt like, oh my gosh, we're really creating this morphogenic field together here.
Yeah.
That's what
counts. So is it different for you? Like, do you notice that when you're meeting people that you really deeply and by the way, thank you for that. That's really beautiful that you said that, because similarly, I felt this is a powerful woman who, like, we can keep up with each other in, conversation. We can enjoy each other's company without feeling like there's a competition. There was a sense of like, oh wow, like this woman, I could really feel and sense that you walked the walk, so to speak, and that you didn't just spew out conscious stuff because you should, spew that out in a conversation to sort of show that you're this intelligent, cutting edge woman. Like, I really felt this genuine, sincere, like, you've done the work and you're still doing the work. And I really love that about you. And I too felt like the synergy, because oftentimes, I don't know about you, if you feel this way, like when you go into conversation with people, it's not always a conversation.
Yes.
One-sided, right?
It's a one-way street, you know?
Yeah, this one-way street. And, you know, either, especially in like networking scenarios, because I mean, a large part of my network is also entrepreneurs. I know you work with a lot of entrepreneurs and businesswomen, CEOs, and like, there tends to be this like connection around what do you do and how great you are versus like really actually authentically knowing who this person is in front of you and feeling them, feeling their heart.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, I definitely feel, well, one thing I wanted to say is like, we really like sometimes, you know, that battling for attention, you know, battling for each other's attention. Like I see that so much at conferences, and where women come in and like even like try to turn you, and I'm like, girlfriend, back off, right? Like, you know, and that's the more the narcissist, right? Because they're more just self-rotating, so to say. But what I feel, it's like, you know, versus, you know, what you said, what do you do, right? Because it's like you just go into this like automatic, repetitive way of being versus really connecting. Like, hold on, is this person breathing in front of me, for example? Am I breathing, right? Versus being just in the head and just having this, like, I always see this like upward energy, right? Versus like going downward and actually like grounding. Do you feel your feet on the ground when you talk to somebody? People won't say that, you know, they didn't feel their feet on the ground.
So what do you think causes people, even people who are, you know, doing great work in the world, who mean well, who, if you were to ask them in any setting, are like, yeah, I really desire to have connection. Like, what do you think causes people to not be in their bodies or not have their feet on the ground or to not really actually connect from their heart, but more from their head? Like, what is it? What do you think it is for you in your experience?
I think it's definitely a defense mechanism that at some point, you know, like when I work with my women, at some point it wasn't safe, you know, to feel, right? Maybe they were made fun of. And when they were in preschool or in like literally, like, I mean, little girls are so mean to each other, right? So that's a whole different other conversation, okay? Because that's where we parents can come in. But, you know, where they just had a traumatic experience or they were excluded or they cried, right? And for me, it was too. I cried and my friends would say like, oh God, here's the drama queen again, right? And so literally I couldn't cry for years, like even if I tried, right? And I think there's so much also lack of trust. So it goes into your mind. So it goes into analysis paralysis, and it comes from that fear of like, what if I make a mistake?
Right.
You know? Like, and certainly not trust my body because we know where that led last time.
So true. It's so true. And I think, you know, coming back to some of the original reasons why I even started this series on Facebook, was because, you know, I think people only want you to see what they want you to see.
Ah, so good. Yeah.
Especially when we're relating. It's like, I remember when I was dating and I was single, and, you know, and you probably hear this all the time, right? It's like those first few months that two people are getting to know each other, the best foot is put forward. You know, it's like they're only allowing you to see the good side, the light shadow, the, like, you know, the parts of them that are, you know, acceptable, maybe they've accepted, or are easy to love, you know, or easy to like type of thing. And they're doing their best. And sometimes I don't actually think it's even conscious for some people. I think it is subconscious, where they want to hide, right, these other parts of themselves. I remember dating and, like, you know, being in this almost fantasy, dream-like experience for the first 2, 3, 4, 5 months. And then all of a sudden it's like this switch goes on and shit hits the fan. And now all of a sudden it's like, you're seeing these sides to them that weren't there. And, like, you know, you're tracing back in your head, like, where did I go wrong? Like, where did I miss this yellow flag and this red flag? And why was it so perfect and like a fantasy and this like daydream for the first several months? And then boom, like this happens. And I don't actually think that this just happens in dating. I actually think that this happens in friendships and in business connections as well. You know, we don't want people to see where we're not succeeding, where we might be having some troubles, where we're actually, you know, the weaker parts of ourselves that are maybe not acknowledged and disowned. I talk a lot about this with every woman that comes on here. So I have a feeling that, yeah, I'm with you in complete agreement and in agreement with that. And I'm also suspecting that it has to do a lot with like insecurity and like, I only want you to see the parts of me that you're going to like or that I think are acceptable. And then I don't want you to see those other parts of me because I'm afraid that once you see that you're going to think that I'm not lovable or I'm not good enough.
I love that you say that, Vanessa, because I was thinking the other piece I want to hit on is like the reason why we have this like go-to piece that we have when we meet people is because that's the fear, right? The fear is like, what if you find out my shadow? Or what if you find out that I actually have even slight social anxiety, or I don't know how to carry on a conversation, right? I have this all the time. You don't know how many women, they can't carry on a conversation. They're terrified that they're going to be excluded if somebody else finds that out, right? And we talk so much about the shadow, as saying, be secure in your insecurities, you know, lean into your uncomfort, because that's when you can truly connect. Like if I would be afraid right now to that you find out something about me, or that you might ask a question that makes me feel uncomfortable, then, you know, I would not be able to connect with you because I would have to control the conversation all the time, right? And that keeps me in my head, where we're going back to head versus body, right? So it's really about not only like accepting the shadow, not accepting the insecurities, but like really loving them. It's like part of us. So actually getting excited about it, and then you give the other person the permission to say, oh yeah, you know, like I have this fear too, or I have this insecurity too.
Yeah, you know, one of the things I like to lead with in one of my programs I run, the SAS program, the Soul Aligned Success Sisterhood, when we come to the retreat, I don't think I lead with it on the calls from what I recall, but when we come to the retreat, I love the women to actually share what they're most afraid of, or the thing that they don't want other people to know about them. Mm-hmm. And it causes this like almost like humanness to be exposed versus because in the program, how it runs at the end, I've been doing retreats. It may change moving forward, but I always like these live in-person experiences, because when you're on a computer, you can sometimes hide, right? You're not always showing up or participating fully. And so when women come together, I love to lead with something edgy like that, because it actually allows women's walls to come down immediately. And it kind of allows them to relate to the humanness, that no matter how, you know, this person may look like they have their shit together all the time, or like they're happy, or they're really thriving, or this is going on in their life. Like this actually allows us to connect more deeply with each other in a relatable way, because at the end of the day, here's the thing. Here's the thing about human beings. I have no idea why we don't get this, right? It's like, and I'm going to be kind of a little tongue in cheek about this. We all take a shit. We all go to the bathroom, right? We all burp. We all fart. We all have to eat. We've all got to sleep. We've all got to clean ourselves because, you know, we may start to smell after a few days. We all have these basic needs. And we all need to be loved. And so to try to cover all these things up that we're doing, you know, in our lives, to pretend that the human part of us doesn't exist.
Right.
And to put on top of it these veils and masks and, you know, to pretty it up with, you know, leading with the things that we're most proud of or accomplish, which there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not judging that. I think that we've got to celebrate those things too. But it's like to think that that person on the receiving end isn't actually going to really understand you. I want to remove that myth that powerful people, or people just in general, we're all people. We all have the same basic needs in life. We all have fears. We all have dreams. We all have, you know, areas of our lives that are needing growth and improvement. We all have parts of ourselves that are fucking awesome and we're owning. And if we can just start to relate to each other, I think we would start to change the world like really quickly. And I also feel like in relationships, because I mean, my God, like, you know this in the relating world, there's just so many rules of what you should and shouldn't do, who you should be, how you should look, that it starts to take away the authenticity and the real reason why two people are coming together to get a need met, and to also deeply connect and be seen.
It's so true. You know, what I hear all the time from my women is like, so what's a good question to ask? Or like, well, how long should I wait until I have sex with the guy and all of this? And I always say, when you meet a guy, you just have a conversation. It's not like you need to think of the next question or he needs to think of the next question, right? You just converse, right? It's like not even, and so you create a field together. It's the best way I can describe it, right? Because people always say, well, how do you do that? I'm like, I feel like you create a field with the other person. And you don't do that by asking questions, right? But the other piece is definitely letting go of the rules, because the rules to me is like really like that safety line that we think we're drowning, right? So we have like the rescue vest, right? Which is like the rules. And
Right.
and then they think because and I had rules too, right? And oh boy, if a man didn't act according to the rules, like if you say you call 5 minutes later, or you're pretty much deleted from my phone, right? So that there was like a punishing aspect behind that, right? That there was actually a very harsh and critical judgment behind a part behind that I had to look at myself, like where am I restraining myself, right? That I can't even give a guy 5 or 10, or where do I not trust myself? So I have to put up all those rules. That's what we also think, right? We're putting up all the rules because that's how I can trust. Because if he meets all those rules, right, and if he has like everything on my list, then I can trust it.
Right.
Because we don't know how to trust ourselves.
Right. Bingo. 100%. Do you find that with a lot of the women coming to you, and even with yourself, that trust was like the one thing that most people come to? Like, I don't trust this person. I can't trust again. This person betrayed my trust. They didn't meet my expectations, and now I can't trust whether or not this person coming along will. Like, and it just creates these like barriers of entry to the heart and to deeply connecting. Like, do you find that it's usually trust that comes in for people?
The trust issue is the biggest thing, right? And I always tell them, well, I mean, so within, so without, right? So like where you're not trusting yourself, where are you not setting boundaries and speaking up for yourself and actually betraying yourself, right? Where you're actually leaving yourself because you want to keep that like round energy, that harmonious energy, that like, and not that edgy energy that you just talked about, right?
Right.
Because you don't want to feel guilty, or you don't want to feel selfish, right? That's like another big piece. So trust is the biggest thing, and to just really it's almost like putting yourself first. That's the best way to say it. Like I dare the women to put themselves first and to actually be labeled selfish. I've been labeled selfish. I've been labeled arrogant. I'm like, okay, what else? What else? Bring it. Because when you can live with all of those shadows and you're just like, wow, that's an interesting shadow. Wow. Because we are everything, right? Mm-hmm. We are all the bitch. We can be, we can kill someone in the right circumstance, right? So we have to, which goes back to the humanness that you talked about, the shadow part of the humanness, that we are able to do everything. If we had grown up in a different environment, we could be the perpetrator. Right? And that's what I see over and over again with like the perpetrator versus the victim, that once the victim is actually happy and in a happy relationship, right? Like she turns into the perpetrator. She turns into the biggest bitch, right? And that certainly happened to me too.
That's really interesting. Really interesting. And what occurs to me as you're saying that, it's almost like we have to expect that there's going to be a part or side of this person that isn't always, perfect or peachy, or like the unicorns and rainbows analogy. It's like we have to expect that people, there's, where there's light, there's also going to be darkness, because we are dualistic by nature as human beings. One is not going to exist without the other, but how we've been conditioned to handle these parts of ourselves is to hide, the darker parts, the parts that aren't acceptable. And really, we pride the parts of ourselves that are more loving or more socially acceptable. And then what happens is, years of pushing and repressing it down, we come into partnership. And like by nature, like relationship is a path, it's a journey. And they're really meant to come into our lives, yes, to have a companion, to do, everyday human things with, but on a deeper, more spiritual level, my belief around relationships is that they're there to push our buttons, They're there to help us evolve and to grow and to get closer and closer to our God selves and to know the true nature of who we are. And you're going to see aspects of your partner and yourself that you don't like at times, that trigger the fuck out of you. And you're like, I would rather not have that. I wonder if, because I think we also live in a culture now too, that's all about the grass is greener. Like there's so many people accessible at our fingertips, like, you know, apps that we can use or you can swipe, right? Where, you know, the side that somebody doesn't like, now all of a sudden they can be discarded and we can be hooked and addicted to the next dopamine rush of meeting somebody new who's coming in and doing the whole, you know, kit and caboodle show, you know, of, oh, these are all the beautiful qualities about me and I love you. And then the minute that the dark shadow comes up, it's like, okay, get rid of this person to come next to. We're living in a society that basically, even in the dating world, is saying that once I reveal who I am, it's not enough, and I'm disposable, and then I can go on to the next person, and this pattern is just happening over and over again, and it actually is sad. And I'm really grateful that there's women like you who are helping human beings. Like I know you're particularly working with women, but you also have a ripple effect in helping men and other, you know, people in relationships to understand that, like, let's celebrate the dark parts of the aspects of ourselves that have not been loved and acknowledged, not hide them, not try to, you know, put them under the rug. Like, fuck that, you know, like that's not helping us anymore. And it's actually causing us to become more disconnected, I think.
Definitely, 100%. And you know, it's really, oh gosh, there's so much I want to say. I remember
it. I want to hear it.
When I was called borderline arrogant, right? I went back to my friend, it was at a conference, and we did a sexy dance, and we're like, all right, I'm arrogant. And especially women who are watching right now and feel really triggered and like, oh my God, she's so arrogant, right? Like to look at yourself, right? Like, what is it for you that you're judging? I don't care what it is. Some people are afraid to be called a slut or whatever. I mean, Buddy and I, we did a shadow ceremony 3 years ago before our wedding, right? And just really laid it all out. Here are all my fears, here are all my monsters. I can be selfish. I like my freedom, whatever it is, you know? And I'm like, I have my insecurities, you know, I can become anxious, whatever it is, right? And then we did that again at our vow renewal last weekend, right? Right. So, but that's like how this looks like, because people are like, yeah, that's all great and peachy, right? But like, how do I actually, how am I actually being vulnerable, right? And women are always shocked. They're always like, well, but then I'm a bitch. I'm like, great, yes, congratulate yourself. And they're like, what do you mean? I've been like fighting my whole life, being this identity, right? And I'm like, no, because you know what's going to happen? I watch women transform in front of my eyes when they see how I relate to my parts, or be like, ooh, I have shame coming up right now. You know, like that was a good example when I spoke at Google, and I told them like how super uncomfortable I felt, like that it was my first corporate gig, right? I've never even worked in corporate. I've always been an entrepreneur. So it was so good. And it really helped them to open up, right? And share things that the woman in the back of the back, you know, in the very back shared, right? And I really believe that's what it is. But we really have to go where it's vulnerable, not like where we feel it's vulnerable because we're like, oh, we've done this over and over again.
Right.
But I keep pushing my edge. Like I know when it feels like that feeling of inadequacy, that's always a good hint for me. That hint of shame, that's another good hint for me, that I'm like, okay, I'm hitting that. That's it here, right? That's my next edge.
I love that. And because I you know, yesterday I was on an interview with Crystal Brandt, and we were talking a little bit about like the new paradigm of feminine leadership. And a lot of it is this, it's like, and I was saying, you know, as leaders, if we've already stepped in, I think we're all leaders because we all have to be leaders of our lives, you know, through and through, where we've got to go first. We've got to, you know, be vulnerable, not for the other person, but for ourselves. You know, if we want something, we've got to go after. Like we're constantly in the leadership role, even if we don't identify with ourselves that way. And the one thing that I know for sure is that if you do identify professionally, or you know that you're here to lead communities or organizations or humanity forward in this transition in consciousness, like one of the most important things is that we have to go first. And, and I love what you said about going to Google and saying, hey, like, this is what's up for me right now. I'm noticing I'm feeling like this, and this is my first time doing that. I feel like that. And it's actually allowing, I believe that vulnerability allows those walls that we build as a form of protection and safety and distrust, like around our hearts and our bodies. It starts to disarm that armory.
Yeah.
So now we're allowing ourselves to be like, hey, like, I'm human and I'm feeling this, even though I may be in this position where I'm coming and giving you a talk. And I'm pretty sure that somebody else in this room may be feeling this way or has felt this way before. How many of you can relate to that? And it like builds this automatic instant connection with somebody. So I also imagine, like, when we're out in the world, whether it's a networking event or we're going on a date or we're meeting, somebody for the first time, like, what would you think about leading with something vulnerable and kind of edgy? Like, would you recommend people to do that? Because I kind of think like that would be kind of cool, actually, if I'm feeling nervous, just saying, hey, I'm kind of feeling nervous right now meeting you, and it's a pleasure to meet you, or I'm feeling really excited, or whatever it might be, like a genuine, authentic, like, piece on vulnerability as a instant sort of way to connect with somebody. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, gosh, I have heard that question quite a bit, because of course we're talking all about vulnerability in my program, right? So like my women are constantly, so when did I talk about it on the first date or the third date or whatever? And I feel the biggest thing for you is like to definitely do something that's like a little edgy, and it doesn't have to be something sharing vulnerably. It could be just to lean back, to allow the man to come to you, right? Or to not say anything and just have like a quiet moment, right? Because most of my women, they just like talk and they just keep in a space and filling out the space, and right. they can't be with this, what happens next, you know what I mean? Because somewhere in the past, when they didn't know what happened next, something bad happened, right? And so now they want to predict what happens next. So they always want to fill in the blanks. So, but in general, I mean, I always love to just say, what's one thing that is vulnerable for me to share. Tony Robbins calls this like pace and lead and pace, or pace and lead, whatever. But like, you share something vulnerable first, and like what's something for you, or just like something uncomfortable, or whatever it is, right? Or something that I've been hiding, or so you can definitely, like, when you're more advanced and you've taken a lot of self-development classes, right? So for those women, I'm like, stretch yourself for sure, right? Because you know yourself so well, right? And you also, it's actually a good test. Like, is this guy gelling with you? Right? Because maybe he's going to be like, ooh. And then he's most likely not going to be your guy, because like if he's not gelling with you, it's going to be a little bit of a more challenging conversation, right? Or maybe it's somebody you wake him up to and he didn't even know was possible, right? Because he was such a people pleaser on the other hand. And he didn't know about sharing something vulnerable. We see that a lot too, right? I call it the round energy, right? And then something vulnerable, what you said, that creates the edge. Or setting the boundary that creates an edge, right? So whatever creates that edge in the relationship, that creates the polarity in the conversation, right? That's what I recommend my women go to. And that could look like what you said, just asking a question like that. And I think it's really cool. And if I would date again, I would definitely do that. Or it can just be simply saying nothing. And just come to you. That can already feel like very scary to someone.
I hear you, because I don't think that we're naturally comfortable, most of us, being in silence, and everything you're saying, I get. Yeah, I'm with you. I guess what was coming up for me as you were talking, it's like a lot of people who have not done development work on themselves don't always have the access to know what's edgy and vulnerable.
Right. Exactly.
So it becomes a lot easier when you've started to explore who you are, and, you've done some of the deeper work on yourself, personally, spiritually, emotionally, to be able to know what your edge is, because I mean, this is easy for us because we do this work. And we work with a lot of people, but I'm imagining, like, if there's people watching, it's like, well, how do I know what my edge is? Like, how do I know, how do I know what's vulnerable right now, because they're operating from such a limited place within themselves still, which is not a judgment. I'm not saying it to judge, because I was once there too. And like, had you and I had this conversation and you gave this to me, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it would have been like, well, I don't want to reveal my imperfections, because that was one of my greatest things that I used to cover up was, I want people to see that I'm perfect and that I'm happy and that I'm positive all the time. I don't want people to know when I'm like on the ground, curled up in a ball, freaking the fuck out because I just got dumped and I feel worthless and not enough. I don't want people to see that. And that was my MO for a long time, especially being in the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
I was, my interpretation at that time for myself to be successful was I had to be perfect. I had to look perfect. I had to be perfect.
Yeah.
And I had this like complex that I developed about myself. And so therefore, when I would go out socially or in my relationships or dating, that is what I would bring forward for people. So I wouldn't know, what the edge would be for me or what vulnerability would look like coming from that place at a very beginner level, because I had started doing this inner work and all that, but there was still a long way to go, for me. So, I mean, what would you say to somebody who's newer to this? Like, if they're looking to connect, if they're if they want to know what it means to be in their edge and to be more vulnerable, like what kind of exercise or tool would you say would help people with that?
Well, so what I've seen in my, I've done like over 600 clarity calls with women, right? Is that when we go into that vulnerable piece, like what are the challenges or possibly even like what impacts, like abandonment had on them or the childhood, or sometimes they talk about their ex-husband, whatever it is, right? Like some sort of abuse. Then after that, they laugh. And so that's like the first piece for them to look at, like, where are you incongruent, right? Because obviously, and I clearly also point that out, said, well, my heart feels sad for you right now. So it's unfathomable how you laugh. Like this is, I mean, I feel like crying for you right now, right? And then I just have them look at where else are you doing that, right? Because you're sending mixed signals. You're not trusting yourself. You're not going into the edge. And, and then of course they say, well, then how would that look like? What that look like is just feeling into it, just saying, I got my heart broken, or this person left me, and just deep breath. And not laughing, right? Because you feel so inadequate and so, like, not you, but like, like we can all feel at times, right? It's a defense mechanism. That's what Brooke just said. Exactly. Right. So you pop out, you want to pop out. It's this physical response because we don't want to feel the uncomfort. And if you don't have enough capacity that I teach my women to hold, I mean, we're holding a freaking baby at some point, okay? So we have a lot of capacity inside of ourselves. But if we haven't developed that emotional capacity, then it pops out really quick, right? Because it's pressure. And that pop out looks like a laughter. So that's a very simple, very basic, what a woman can quickly recognize. And I know they do because they tell me, or that it's, oh, I just laughed. Oh, what was that about? And then I teach them, okay, when you laugh, now become curious. Why did I just laugh? Like, if you don't know what it is, but like, I laughed, but it wasn't funny. So what emotion did I just want to escape from?
Right.
So that would be like the basic step for me that everyone can do.
I love it.
Of their home.
Yeah, I love that. It's like it's stretching your emotional capacity and bandwidth to be able to recognize where we have defense mechanism. As Brooke, it's so great to have you here. Hi, love. This stretching and this capacity, and also learning the types of defense mechanisms that we put on and we put out, to protect ourselves. I think this is so great. In the space of being like vulnerable and curious. So I used to do a lot of relational work back in the day, a couple brands ago. I mean, part of my work has always been the same, helping people to really connect to the true nature of who they are, get closer to their God selves. Now just my niche just works more with leaders who are looking for the up levels, the upgrades, and to really step powerfully into their mission and fullest expression of who they are. But there was a time when, I was doing a lot of deep relational work. I worked with a lot of couples. I worked with a lot of single people, either helping them to get married or divorced or, to leave relationships that weren't right to find one that was better. So I did a lot of relational work. And so I'm so curious because, I'm not talking about this as much, with clients these days. It comes up, even in my last round of my SaaS program, my gals wanted me to do a Facebook Live on dating and relationships. And so I did a little bit of that. But like, I want to know from you, and this is kind of like shifting the conversation. I'm honoring my curiosity. Like what two things that come up. First of all, in the spiritual and conscious communities, we hear a lot about this twin flame stuff. And I want to find my soulmate and and then the difference between a karmic relationship. So I would love to hear your spin on some of this.
Totally.
And then the other piece is like getting a little edgier, because a lot of women do ask this, do I have sex on the first date? Like, should I have sex with a man, or in any partnership? And this goes for whether, you're in a heterosexual relationship or not, should I have sex or be physically intimate with somebody that I feel a lot of fire for and connection with instantly? Like, is that something that can potentially harm the connection moving forward? Or is it something that you feel like, hey, if like your soul is needing that experience, like go for it? I'd love to hear your spin on this because it's something that I've gotten asked so many times. I have my beliefs and opinions on it, but I'm so curious to hear what you have to say if you're open to sharing those.
Yeah, no, this is good because, so one thing that Brody and I talk about is codependence versus interdependence, right? And how people use twin flame, what we've seen it manifest. Now, who knows if that's really how it was meant to be, it's like an excuse to be codependent, right? I see this over and over again where couples just do everything together. They totally rely on each other. And if I would take them apart, a sign for me to have that it's a healthy interdependent relationship is if I take those two people, they both have their own feet to stand on, right? They have their own power, like going downward, right? And just very grounded. And in who they really are. They have, in other words, they have their own individual identity, right? So that's why I'm a little bit like, okay, twin flames is definitely, I have a trigger towards that, right?
Me too.
It's not necessary. I mean, who knows, maybe at a different dimension and I don't take anybody's beliefs away, but that's my personal belief. And that's what I also tell my clients. And, in terms of soulmates, for me, it's more about like, is it a spiritual partnership? Because I feel there's so many labels, twin union and flame and soulmates and karmic partners. And it just we get so, there's catches even more in our head, right? Because like now we're thinking, oh my God, are we soulmates, but I don't have this attribute, but I read it, but it's not my soulmate, and you know what I mean?
I'm gonna pull cards to see if it's my soulmate.
Like it's like, oh, he's my soulmate, but he's not my twin flame, and so it can become like a little crazy, and you can get really caught in this like maze. And then the more people you ask, the more opinions you get, right? Because now we can talk to angels and spiritual guides and and they all have a different opinion too. So it's really about like finding your truth and just really looking at, okay, so, do I feel supported by my partner? Do I feel like I'm growing with my partner, right? So like, it's really, this, I learned this from one of my mentors back in the day, that there's like the human level where it's all about like, the animal level, right? Where it's all about just sex and like the physical attributes and procreation basically, right? And it's the human level. And it's all about compatibility. And then there's the spiritual level where you feel like we have this bigger calling in this life, right? Like when I met Brody, he told me we have a big, the first night we met, like literally within a couple hours, he told me we have this huge responsibility to humanity, right? So that's, chances are really high that's like the soul partner, spiritual partner, whether it's like coming from the same soul or soul family and if it really matters, but just that's what I look for. Right? It's really like, do we have similar values? Do we grow together? And do we fulfill? Do we can feed each other's need for significance? I think that's a big one for sure, right? Because that can lead easily to shadows really quickly if that's not being fulfilled, or at least how to deal with that shadow, right? So that's like where I would go with your first question. And then the second question, unless you want to add something onto that, but The second question, it's really all about balance, right? I mean, if you're somebody who's like kept herself celibate her whole life, and you're just really shying away from sexuality, there might be a block, where you're not trusting yourself, and where it would be actually a good thing to have like an opener, to have sex with somebody that you really trust, that you feel really energetically aligned. And how you know that is, it feels easy. You feel like it's easily trusting. You don't have to like overcome a big resistance or something. It's almost like something like pulls you toward that person, right? And you don't feel weird afterwards. That's too. And for some women, it's like they jump into bed too quickly, out of anxiety, to create attachment really quickly, right? To think the man will love them more. So for them, so it's all about balance, right? So for them, I recommend, let's back off, or let's see if you can have like one sexual partner that you really trust, so that you can have your sexual needs met. So I think that's definitely very important. Our pussy needs to be fed.
I love that.
There's no doubt about that. Okay, like let's not pretend we're like, it needs to be fed, like our sexual desires, right? Our creation, pleasure, but it's like about, be careful like who you attach yourself to. So if you like attach yourself all the time to the wrong men because of the sexuality, then that's what I recommend. Have someone there is like a good buddy, that you have like a really, really good connection with, that you trust. And so you have that taken care of, so you don't jump into something, or pleasure yourself before you go on a date.
Yeah.
Great thing to do, right? Like get yourself an orgasm right before the, for several reasons, it's a great thing to do. So you ask and then you shall receive.
It's so good. There's a bit of an echo all of a sudden, but I'm so with you. I love these answers, because I don't know if you get a lot of women asking these kinds of questions for you, because I mean, years ago, I used to be obsessed with the whole twin flame thing. And I mean, like obsessed. I almost find that a lot of people in the spiritual community tend to have a little bit of that obsession when they first discover it. And, I just find that these labels that we put on relationships, my belief is that at the heart and soul of all of us, we are spiritual beings. So every relationship is spiritual. There are relationships that are very much, there is a sacred mission that in the partnership unfolds, such as, you and Brody. But I think that when we start to look and examine, and it can kind of blind us to actually what's happening in real time in the relationship. Oh, this mirrors the twin flame. Well, what does it really matter?
Right.
If the guy, like, doesn't matter that it's a twin flame, like, does it make you feel more important, or that you're more evolved, that you've met your twin flame? Like, what does it really matter if it's a soulmate or a twin flame or a karmic relationship? The point is that, we're here to grow, we're here to evolve. And every person that comes into our lives, into our orbit, is there to help us to evolve. And yes, I've watched that Matt Kahn video, and I agree very much with him, because the twin flames, he says, are often the ones you want to run away from. Run for the hills. And, the soulmate relationships are the ones that tend to feel a little bit more easy and are comfortable and are more supportive. I mean, I definitely know that my relationship with Jeffrey is a soulmate for me. I mean, and I've had those karmic relationships where it's like there's things to wrap up with this person, these, sometimes often hard lessons that I need to learn, that I'm searching outside of myself for somebody else to fill a void in the past, or to satiate for me, instead of going and looking at what's happening inside of me. And they're like wake-up calls. I find karmic people, as hard as they are, they're also our wake-up calls, to start pouring love or whatever else that is, that we're desiring to be filled within our own selves, or to grow in some way. And yes, soulmates can be friendships and lovers, and same thing with twin flames, they say too. One of the things that one of my teachers back in the day used to say, like, when you feel that like super instant hot connection with somebody, run away, because that often is the one that's going to be, when that flame dies, it's not going to be so easy to sort of pick up where you're leaving, where you've left off. And so, I love this perspective on it because after a while, and I realized like none of this matters. What really matters is like what's happening in that connection, whether it is a friendship, whether it is a lover, whether it is a partner, or somebody you're dating or you're in a monogamous or committed relationship with. It's like what's happening moment to moment. What is this person bringing in your life? What are you bringing to them? What are you learning? How are you growing? Like, do you share the same values? Are needs being met? Is there communication? Is there love here? Is there ability to communicate and work through conflict? These are the things that ultimately matter. And I kind of want to like demystify and like just burst the bubble on this whole thing of like defining the relationships in a certain way. It's like every relationship's spiritual because we're just spiritual beings having this awesome and sometimes really fucking hard human experience. And we're bound to have relationships where you're going to have the shadow, you're going to have the light, you're going to have all kinds of stuff coming up. And then there's going to be relationships where it's a little bit smoother. So, I think if we look at it from a different perspective versus this fantasy and the codependency and, all this like, I don't know, this like airy fairy type of mentality, we can start to actually get into like the meat of what a relationship is really there for and how it's really meant to support us in knowing who we are individually and in relationship to others. So it's like so beautiful.
Absolutely. And I've seen like people, who are together that I think are not a match and they call each other twin flames. And I feel that's the danger is once you actually made a decision, it's when the brain makes a decision, it's hard to like back off, right? So now we have to like make a case why we're twin flames, even though somewhere inside of ourselves, we're probably afraid that we're not twin flames. And it's crazy. It's a construct anyways. But now we're like trapped, right? Because now we told everybody else we're twin flames and whatever. And so that's like another reason why I don't like the labeling, right? Because who knows what it evolves into, and and don't call this too early. Like that's another thing I see. I mean, gosh, until Brody proposed to me, that's probably when I'm like, we might be soulmates, like or whatever, something like that. But somebody I spend the rest of my life with, right?
Yeah.
Versus like, oh my God, I met the one. I think that's another thing that we women do. Like we call soulmate or twin flame too early, like just refrain from that too. Be careful to do that.
Yeah. I mean, it is so true. I also I came from the school of like, I think it's wise to wait before engaging sexually, unless that's what you're choosing for yourself. I think if you're like very, if you're open to having an experience, whether it's sexual, you're just like, then own that. I think a lot of people don't own that and they go in like, well, I should want a relationship, but they're denying themselves the pleasure of really having that sexual connection. And vice versa. I think that my school of thought is that if you're really looking, whenever you're looking for a connection with somebody, you want to know that there's somebody to be in your life, and you're really like that deeply is what you desire as a human being. You're like, I want to deeply connect with somebody. I want to potentially build a life with this person. I want to get to know them. I want to become friends. I want to know that they've got my back. I've always typically have said like, then it's going to take a little bit of time to get to know somebody. And so like you wouldn't just invite a stranger into your home.
Right.
That you don't know, right? So why would you invite somebody into your bedroom and into your body that you're not sure about, out of, I'm talking like if you're not, if the sexual piece is not something you're owning and you're wanting, like if you want that, go for it. I think.
Right. But totally. I totally agree with you. And I feel like in a way, a lot of women don't set enough boundaries.
Yeah.
That's what I actually believe. I don't think there's too many boundaries set. I think there's too little boundaries to be set, and or from a different motivation, right? Like from the wrong space that, then he will love me or whatever the case may be, right? So I think it's really important. And then the other piece also that I want to mention, it's this whole projection thing. Like we talk about something that's a construct, right? Like versus like for me, it's more about like, someone who can hold you in your shadow, right? Like somebody where you say, I have like a murderess inside of me, or I have like what inside of me, right? Whatever that you're running away from, that they say, great, what else? right? And not they don't run, they become curious. Oh, great. Like, when is this part coming up? And, what do you think she wants? Right. And so, like, this is the kind of partner, or when you rage, like a rage monster, right? Like, I'm not that I have any experience about that, right? But like, who can, who can like hold.
No, we've never been angry and rage before. No, never.
We're angels, right? Look, I'm blonde, it's like an angel. But like, that to me, it's like another sign that this is your guy. Like, my guy can put me in my place, but he can also hold space for me, and he's like, okay, like, what else is there? Or he can challenge me. He's like, that's not all of your anger, or that's not all of your sadness. Like, what else is there, and what keeps you back from that, right? So that's another piece, or at least, not everybody's obviously a coach, or, knows how to do that, but like, you see that this like desire is there, right? Like, this forward movement, the man is like really like participating, engaged with you, right? And he really wants to work with you.
That, I mean, that is something that's so, so important. I think especially for women, we have a really wide range of emotions. And I mean, one of the things for me that I knew wasn't happening when I was single was that I was not being accepted for who I was. And what I mean by that is all parts of me.
Yeah.
As soon as I would be vulnerable, or as soon as I would be upset, or as soon as I would cry, or as soon as it wasn't like this even keel thing that made the person I was dating, comfortable. Like, that was the playing field, because that was the range that they had been able to play in within themselves. As soon as other parts of myself that were making that person uncomfortable, I wasn't accepted anymore.
Right.
And that was one of the things that I made an agreement with myself. That was a boundary that I need to be with a human being, a man in my life who knows how to accept all parts of me, because I'm going to fucking cry. I'm going to swear. I'm going to be angry. I'm going to have shame come up, or guilt. Or I'm going to be whatever I'm going to be. And if he cannot accept and hold all of that, then we're going to have a massive problem in this relationship. I can't fully be me. And I think that a lot of people are actually, that's one of the fundamental pieces that most people are looking for in a relationship, both men and women.
Yeah.
And I be myself with this person, all aspects of myself. And for the feminine, because we have, there's such a range of emotions and spectrums, right? It's like that we can play in. We want the man to be able to hold that for us. And I also want to invite men too. Like, men are emotional as well. And I want to start seeing them have the permission to be able to emote and to cry and to bring their full feminine parts of themselves to a relationship too. And for a woman not to say, hey, you better fucking man up. Like, don't cry, don't be a baby, or, other derogatory terms. It's like, it's being able to hold the space for us to all be ourselves in relationships without it meaning or taking it personally sometimes either. Like, there's this craving, I think, for all of us to be able to be accepted and loved for who we are. Like, it's like, God, you can't have that. Then what the fuck do you have in a relationship? Just some chit chat, like you're at the office, cubicle talking about the weather and how sunny it is outside, and if you should wear a blue top today versus a red one. Like, what are you talking about in relationships if you cannot be your whole self? Like,
that's why so many women, I feel very lonely, in their relationships or in their marriages because of that, right? Because just certain parts are, or they have the story like, I wear the pants, right? So polarity is like dead pretty much. And so like the men just like, they can't hold the space. And I love what you say, Vanessa, because it's not so much about it. You say, man up or whatever, because I never told Woody that once, right? It's like you as a woman provide that space for your man that he wants to hold space for you, right?
Yes.
And you allow that space for him to also cry or rage. I mean, I love when my husband rages because he barely does. And I challenge him, right? Because I see just which part is like imbalanced. I just care him to be balanced. Like, I don't care what that looks like. And so when we start to have this kind of conversation, that's like the biggest piece, right? And like what you said, like otherwise, it's like you live from a place of, you don't know each other. Or then they're like just out of the sudden divorces where you're like, well, one day everything was great. And then just one day I woke up and I had a letter from the attorney filed for divorce. I'm like, well, let me backtrack a little bit. Okay. So there's
dissect this.
That's not like a surprise, but what happened is like, you guys are so blind to each other that there's no space. There's no space to say part of me wants to run, or part of me wants to cheat, or part of me wants to, yesterday we were like at SeaWorld, at night, and Brody and I just said, it was just nice because it was breaking the whole routine. That's another thing I always recommend, right? Break the freaking routine. And it just came to me, I'm like, what do you do with that part that wants to schnuckle everyone, right? Because schnuckle means, have sex with, in Brody and Antia language. So what do you do?
That's cute.
Right? And he said it's so funny because he's like, let me know when you figured it out, right? And he was just like honest with me, right? But that's the kind of conversations that are possible. We both had a good laugh. And, and so we talked about the features versus benefits, and that he has all the benefits with me and things like that, right? But who else can you have this conversation with? And you can ask the most scary questions that you don't want to ask, right? You don't want to know. I don't want to know. Maybe he says he's going to be attracted to this woman or whatever, versus like, no, how much more space can you create? How much more edge can you go into?
Yes, because often I think just being a woman and having a lot of conversations with so many women over the years, and just even hearing myself, there's like a lot of expectation for men to be able to hold the space for us.
Yeah.
The question is like, are we holding in the space and providing the safety for our men to also be able to show up and emote and to share what's going on inside of them? Similarly to what you're talking about, even Jeffrey and I the other day were having a really deep and honest conversation. And sometimes it's just about like, for him and for me, we need to share something that's like weighing on us. And like, I can tell if there's something going on for him where he's like in a process, thinking, I'll be like, hey, is there something that you want to share? And what we've decided and we've talked about in our agreement, in our container, it's like, yeah, sometimes all I need to do is just share this desire or share what's going on for me or what's coming up for me in this moment. It doesn't actually mean that I want to act on it or something needs to change, right, or I need to do something about this. It's just like, this is how I'm feeling. And because, both of us in the past have not had the safety and the space to be able to bring all of that in relationship, because we've been left, or because the person on the receiving end has been defensive or gets upset or takes it personally, then we stop having that safety and that space to be able to show up in that way. And so for us, it's like we've created an agreement and a container between the both of us where it's like, okay, like if I'm triggered by what you're saying, that's not you, that's my stuff coming up, and vice versa. And allowing each other sometimes just to have a voice. Sometimes things inside of us and in relationships just want to have a voice.
Right.
Expressed. It doesn't mean that something's actually going to happen, because I often find that when we don't have a voice or an outlet or the space or safety in our relationship containers and agreements, we end up acting on those things, which is why the divorce papers show up unexpectedly, or a partner may cheat, or something may be going on that, for years it's been repressed or hasn't been spoken about, or the relationship just doesn't have the bandwidth to be able to hold that level of depth and honesty and authenticity between two people. And that's why it's like, it always comes back down. And I'm sure you feel the same way. Like when you're working with your women, like it comes back down to self, because we can only give and show up so powerfully. We can only go so deep in our relationships and high in our relationships as we've done this work on ourselves. And so the more that we know who we are as women, as men, as human beings, and we are gone internal, we learn about our defense mechanisms. We learn about the parts of ourselves that are repressed or hidden or not acknowledged. We see and honor the parts of ourselves that are magnificent and that we're really like here to own, and we become a fuller expression of ourselves. Like, then our relationships become that much more rich and deep. But we can't expect people to give those things to us without us being the leaders and the role models, and sometimes having to go first, you know, and going first doesn't mean necessarily in the relationship going first, although sometimes it does, but more specifically with ourselves. It's like, I love that thing I saw on your public figure page, because I believe in the exact same thing. Like, if you're looking for the one, you're the one first. Like, look at yourself first. You know, don't expect the one to be this person that you're going to pour all of this, like, everything into. It's like, you're the one. Your God self is the one. Marry and unify that first, like, truly. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, what's going to happen is there's such a fullness and a wholeness that comes from this deep honoring of, like, really knowing that you're the one, that the one in maybe human form has the more of the space to walk into, you know, your field, to come, your realities can collide, because now there's not all this pressure that this person's got to be the fucking one all the time. Like, what does that even mean? You know? So God, this is such a robust conversation. I could go on there for hours. We're already at the hour mark. My goodness.
I know. Oh my God, I have so much to say about that. Yeah. And one thing we always say, you know, a couple of things is, like, you know, I mean, I tell Brody when something comes up that wants to manipulate him, like, I'm like, oh, my ego just wants to manipulate you right now. And then we talk about how it wants to do that. And also, like, there's no guilt in our household, right? There's no guilt tripping. There's no manipulation of any kind. And if I feel that from Brody, I call him out. I'm like, do I just see a guilt in your voice? Mm. And then we'll talk about it, right? Like, dude, no guilt. You know, like, don't feel bad about whatever. It's something I need to work through. And that, I think that's the biggest piece, is like, you take responsibility for your partner, but not in a codependent part, but actually for the space that you're creating around your partner. Yeah. For his needs. Very different.
I love this. I love you, Antia. You're so awesome. Like, relationships are it is so robust. It's such a big topic. I think that we'll probably have to do a part 2 at some point.
I know.
Because I love this conversation, and I know that so many people love this conversation too. And, you know, relationships are, you know, a really quick way to shift the consciousness of the planet, and, you know, to evolve and to grow, and for us to continue to connect more deeply with each other on the planet when we actually learn the real reason why we have them. Because we've been given this fairy tale perception of relationships. And yes, is it possible to have romance that sweeps you off your feet later? Sure. But the reality is, it's like, relationships are here for our growth and for our evolution, and to learn from each other. So 100%. You're amazing. So I want the audience to know first, if anybody has any questions, whatever's been happening on my screen here today, usually I can tell who's on. Brooke, you've been awesome. Thank you so much for engaging with us. If you have any questions, let us know. If there's anybody else who's on with us, thanks for being here first and foremost. And if you have any questions, please, this would be the time to pop it in the comment box so that Antia and I can answer your question, or if it's one of us that you have a question for, we're happy to help you out. And even after, if you're catching this later, please make sure, you know, you ask us questions. I'll be tracking all the comments and questions coming in. But in the meantime, if anybody does have a question, what's going on for you right now? Like, how can people, you know, find you? Do you have anything that you're offering currently that, you know, women can know about that may help them with their love lives and their dating? You know, please share what you've got going on, Antia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for the ladies who are like, oh gosh, this was really juicy and I want more of that, yay! And so I offer my Find the Right Man Clarity call. So I have some spots open right now. Which is a 60-minute phone call with me where we go deeper, right? And you've gotten to know me now, right? So I'm with you taking a deep look here, like how connected you are with what you really want. And I'll pick up on your frequency if you actually believe in it. And also, like, how much can you actually connect also with your pain? What are you hiding? What do you don't want anybody else to see, right? So we're creating a custom plan for you, so you actually know what to do step by step versus listening to a million other resources and videos and you don't know what to implement first. We're going to create a step-by-step system that works for you specifically. And if that's you, which I know it is, otherwise you wouldn't be listening right now, okay? So hop on over to findtheoneelite.com.
One second. I want to write findtheoneelite.com.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to show that on the screen for you. Did I get that one right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Look at this gorgeous pink. I love it.
I know. I matched it to my branding color, so I figured out how to do that.
I would use that too if I wouldn't brand with my husband together, you know. So the guys don't go so well with pink, you know.
Awesome. That's awesome. Yes. So go on over to findtheoneelite.com if you're interested in booking that 60-minute call-in with Antia. And follow her. Like, are you active on Facebook and Instagram?
Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube. We have a huge YouTube channel, Antia Boyd. So I'm everywhere.
Awesome. 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 That's great. That's great. And it looks like Brooke has a question, and she's asking, how can you invest and anchor in the I'm the one frequency? So do you have a suggestion for her on that? And I'll sit with that as well.
How can you anchor the I'm the one frequency? Is that what the question was?
That's how I'm interpreting it. Is that it, Brooke? Is that what you're asking? We'll wait for her.
So was that related to that quote that we said that you have to be
like best anchor. Okay, so best anchor in the I'm the one frequency. So yeah, like, you know, when I was saying, you know, that bit around you know, you've got to become the one before you find the one, that piece. What would you suggest for Brooke and anybody else who's listening on how to
it's really about, like, you know, building relationships with your shadow, right? So like really celebrating it, being like, yippee, I'm selfish, or yippee, I'm whatever, you know, I'm a bitch, or yippee, I'm arrogant, or and just really create that kind of relationship with all your parts. So write them down. So right now I challenge you to start writing down, what am I hiding from everyone? What am I afraid they're going to find out, right? And create that relationship. And if you don't know how to do that, then reach out to me, right? But that's like, that's the biggest step. It's really to create not only an accepting, but really like a loving, a celebratory relationship. Like it's your best friend, because it is your best friend.
Yeah, it's so true. I love that. I'm with you on that. My piece is also, you know, look at where, and this is for you, Brooke, and anybody, because this is such a great question. Thank you for asking this. Is, you know, where are you putting expectation upon the one outside of you, like those things that you're wanting that person to potentially fill or like fill up for you? Can you give aspects of that to yourself that does not replace the ability and the need for a connection? I get that. Like what we do with our partners is going to be different than sometimes what we're doing with ourselves, you know, but oftentimes, and doing this from a genuine place where it's like, you know, I'd really love to go and have this experience. Okay, can you give that to yourself? Are you allowing yourself to have that? Can you fill that up with somebody else? Because I hear so many people that are like, oh, you know, when I have the partner, I'm going to go on this holiday, or when I have that, the one comes in my life, then I'm going to go and do this for myself, or we're going to have that experience. And it's like, why the fuck are you waiting? Go and give those things to yourselves, you know? So whether it's and maybe it might mean like making a list, like mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and energetic, like, and look at the things that you're wanting that partner to fill up for you in your life. And ask yourself, is there a way, when you make that list under each of those columns, is there a way that I can give parts of those things or those experiences that I'm looking for in the partner or the one to myself right now? Like, is there a way for me to do it in such a way that it kind of gives me the same sort of feeling, and do it not because you think that by doing this exercise, it's going to bring the one in. Like, you know, I'm going to do the work because then I'm going to have this result, but like, I'm going to do this because it genuinely is honoring my deep desires that I have. And I want to give those experiences maybe to myself first, so that when that person does come in, there's not as much pressure on them, or pressure on myself, or expectation for this experience, for this situation, this codependency to start to happen. So, and that's just an exercise that just dropped in as a download real quick. I don't know if that will help, but I'm imagining that it probably will, because oftentimes, and I've done this before in the past, like the very things that I was expecting a man to give me, I wasn't giving to myself.
and I think the biggest thing too is, Vanessa, I can add on to that, is yeah, to make that list, what you said, right? Like, what do you want in the other person and how much am I embodying that in myself? So do you want an athlete, but you're eating potato chips on the couch? So yeah, maybe you need to get to the gym, okay? So I'll give swimming or whatever, right? That's number one. And what was the other piece I just wanted to say about that? That's something important. Oh, I just forgot. Yeah, I forgot.
It'll come back. If it comes back, we'll make a space for it before we sign off. But yeah, I love that. It's like, oh, I want, this type of person, but I'm not that person, at all. Like from the gym to, it can be anything. I want a man who, holds space for me, but can you hold space for yourself? Like, do you have the ability to hold, the emotions for yourself? Or like, what's the first thing you do when you cry? Do you distract or numb yourself or avoid it? So you can't expect a man to come in to hold the space for you if you're not even holding that for yourself. So, I mean, just to kind of add on to that, I'm with you. It's exactly what I mean by these pieces. Did it pop up for you, the way you wanted to remember?
Yes. So that other piece was to remember that the soulmate is real, or the twin flame, or whatever you want to label it, right? But the pedestal is not, okay? So that's what I always say, right? The spiritual partner, or whatever you want to call him, is real, but the pedestal is not. So I feel like we have this like sense where we need to work up to something or to achieve something. And I always say, for you, how easy it is to meet the right one. That's like the super, super easy part, right? But then to actually start like having this relationship and creating the space and practicing the authenticity and transparency, right? If you focus on that versus like, he's not on a pedestal, he's going to fall off so quickly if you do that, right? Like, get him off the pedestal. He's a normal human being. He has flaws, he has weaknesses, and he has strengths, right? So that's going to help you too, to really ground more into the one, because that's the one. The one is you, right? So it's just as real as you are, and as imperfect as you are. Trust me, it's just going to be a very harmonious experience with him, and it's going to be great sex and all that stuff, right? So it's all awesome, and you grow together amazingly, and he's a human being like you. You literally feel like you'll sleep next to him, like you feel like you're sleeping next to yourself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Fuck yes. Love this. So good. Oh, Antia, we could keep going and going. I'm glad that helped you, Brooke. Awesome. You're welcome. So, I'll be back in a couple weeks with another guest, another awesome woman who's up to fucking great stuff in the world, and who's here to share her genius, just like Antia was, and my guest, in the first 3 episodes. I'm just really enjoying these conversations, and I hope you are too. Those of you who are watching and catching the replays, that this is adding value to your lives, and and to every aspect of your human experience, because that's what I'm here to provide, as are all of my guests. To have these deep, authentic, real conversations, and also to provide some value and some learnings, in these conversations, because there's so much here, so rich and so deep. As for me, what I've got going on right now, I'm actually enrolling for VIP days. So, 1 day, 2-day immersive experiences with me in person or virtually. We go deep, and it's intense, and it's going to transform the way you are showing up in your world. So whether it's a personal, professional thing, or a combination of both, if you're interested in finding out more, just private message me, and we'll talk about it, and we'll see if it's a fit for you. But other than that, I'll be back in 2 weeks with this, awesome series. And I just want to thank you, Antia, for joining me here, and for sharing all of your wisdom, your heart, your love, your soul, and your mission, what you're most passionate about in your life, and just having this awesome, real conversation with me. It was such a pleasure to be here with you.
Oh, same here, Vanessa. I'm beyond delighted and inspired to have been here.
Amazing. So thank you to everybody who joined us. Have a beautiful day wherever you are in the world. We'll catch you next time in a couple weeks on the Elite Women Live series. Talk to you soon, and have a great day. Bye.
Take care. Bye. Mwah.